Next speaker is Randy Charles. Randy serves as the head of marketing for Facet Wealth, which is an innovative fintech company that enables access to high quality financial planning for everyday American families. Definitely an industry, that's seeing a lot of change right now. Prior to that, she was the head or led teams at Talkspace, which is an online therapy app. Blue Apron. She was also she worked for American Express. Was the director of digital acquisitions there. Worked for Hilton. Randy has worked across a lot of different industries and has held a lot of very good jobs in great positions with very big, either cool startups or very well-established companies. And we're really glad to have her here with us today.
Thank you, Amin. It's great to be here and hear from so many different industries. I think what we've seen is that the challenges of this pandemic are just manifesting themselves in very different ways. And it's really cool to just see a bunch of people come together and share some of those insights. So as you mentioned, I lead marketing for Facet Wealth, which is a fintech startup that's focused on democratizing access to high quality financial planning. We focus on the 33 million plus mass affluent households in America and ensuring that they can access services that have previously only been available to those with large portfolios of investable assets. So hopefully that gives some context as to some of what I'll share today. The financial services industry has really had a mixed bag of results since the onset of the pandemic. So let's start with a little bit about what we do know. Jessica actually surfaced some of these points in her presentation earlier. So we know that unemployment is high. We know that the market is extremely volatile. We know that the Fed has cut interest rates. And when we think about how some of that pans out in the financial services space, financial advisory is largely a recurring revenue model. So this means fees are most often charged either as a percentage of assets in an investment account or annual fees for working with an advisor. So we're typically looking at longer sales cycles and long-term relationships with clients. So this is definitely different than some of your more commerce or transactional based businesses. Definitely much more of a considered purchase, and again, that recurring revenue. So what does all of this mean for our prospect and client base? Some of the things that we've seen so far is that there's definitely an increased need for advice and guidance. So people are starting to encounter questions like, what does this all mean for me if I'm about to retire? Or what if I'm actually living on a fixed income in retirement already? They see actions like the interest rate cuts and they start to think, should I be refinancing a mortgage? They see some of the market volatility and wonder, is now actually an attractive time to invest because prices are low, or is it actually inherently more risky and I should be looking to stuff my mattress with cash? And they often don't have high quality, credible sources of places to get answers to those questions. But what they do have right now is the time to look for those answers. And so we've actually seen a pretty high uptick across the board in browsing intent. People are engaging really heavily with content, particularly while they're at home. They're reading a lot more, they're engaging with Q&As, they are submitting more. We host webinars fairly regularly for our business, and we've seen huge increases in the amount of questions we get in advance since all of this started. So it's just an indicator that people are actually being a bit more thoughtful and intentional about their quest for answers to some of these key factors that will drive a lot of their financial life. Additionally, in financial services, we haven't quite seen some of the really sharp declines in CPMs or discounts on various media formats. And this is because there are a lot of content aggregators in the space. So it's an ideal time for content marketers in financial services. And really that means that the saturation of media hasn't necessarily taken that backseat quite yet. So that's a broad set of considerations, but that's just a few things that are really top of mind as we're navigating this. What I tried to do next and wanted to talk to you all about is think about how does this actually translate to the challenges at hand for marketers, whether you're on the acquisition or the retention side. So I thought let's start with the acquisition side. Generally, across the board, you should expect to see longer sales cycles. So we see, while people have that high level of browsing intent, they are looking for content and they're definitely interested in the services that we provide in the realm of financial advisory. They're more hesitant to make big purchase decisions. So I think for marketers, this is a really good opportunity to revisit and innovate on the lead nurture campaigns that you have in flight today. The second thing I'd talk about there is that it's a really good time to continue to foster a culture of experimentation. With more users that are browsing, there are inherently more opportunities to capture their attention. One of the traps of social distancing and some of the stay-at-home life is that it can be really easy to adopt a task-based approach to your day. You could sit down and say, okay, I just have to get through work and get through what's on my list and operate within the confines of what you know. But I really do believe that the companies that will win and come out on top of all of this are the ones that embrace this time and use it to innovate and revisit some of their past assumptions. So you may have tested and vetted channels or ad formats and said, okay, we've concluded this doesn't work for us, so we're not going to do it. Well, the world's a little bit of a different place right now, and it's a good chance to actually see if some of those tactics that you may have parked previously could actually be quite beneficial now. A couple of things that have been particularly top of mind for us as we're thinking with that lens has definitely been SMS messaging, particularly in that lead nurture funnel, and programmatic direct mail. So both of those probably seem very analog for a panel that's focused on digital, but there's a really good opportunity here to tie together your online and offline strategies and revisit those multifaceted ways to get in front of your users. Programmatic direct mail in particular, really powerful way to retarget your site visitors and your funnel dropouts with a completely different experience than where they first discovered you. So that's probably on the acquisition side of the house. On the retention and engagement side of the house, financial planning is often viewed as discretionary spend. So the value of the service is really kind of intangible, and the opportunity to reap the benefits can often be years or even decades away. A lot of people think that it's work you put in now, but you don't really feel it until you get to retirement. So there's a challenge there because we're at this point in time where people are rigorously evaluating their discretionary spend and expenses. The critical challenge at hand for retention and engagement marketers is to expedite and perpetually reinforce that cost to value reconciliation. So when I get more specific into our space, what I would say is that there's two considerations for typical clients of financial advisory firms that I'd highlight here. So the first is, generally speaking, clients derive value from face-to-face interactions. So even if they can't see that return on investment, they typically see a lot of value and feel accomplished when they go to a bank, they shake an advisor's hand, they leave with paperwork. And second, when choosing a financial services provider in a pre-pandemic world, clients were fairly tolerant of the time frame that it would take to see that value, to see returns on their assets or make progress towards their financial goals. And the current state of the world has kind of turned these two value props on their head and turned them into real challenges for engagement marketers within the space. So at Facet, we're a remote advisory practice. So we've been building a product that fosters that sense of value, builds relationships without that handshake for many years prior to COVID-19. But I do believe that this current situation highlights the need for businesses to really double down on ways that they can foster engagement when in-person interaction isn't possible. The other thing that I would call out here is it's a good time to kind of ask yourself the question, what digital experiences and interactions can I provide to my client base that enables them to have that positive cost to value reconciliation in an expedited and remote type of environment? So that could be done through content, through forum meetings with experts, through assessments. We've seen a lot of uptake in users engaging with things like retirement calculators or quizzes. People love something tangible that they can sort of use to gain some information about themselves, and also content that they can share with others. And then the last piece I would say is this is also a really important moment to reward loyalty. You should be revisiting the programs you have in place to let your clients know that you're grateful for their business, for your relationship with them, and the opportunity to work with them to achieve their goals. Certainly don't make the assumption that clients that you've had for a really long time will continue to be clients forever, because that's just the way it is. Again, this is a time where I think users are really rigorously evaluating, particularly discretionary spend. And if you want to come out on the right side of that, you have to find ways to demonstrate your value, even with the clients that sometimes can take a backseat in marketing plans. So in short, given the long-term nature of our industry, the impact of COVID-19 is still a little bit murky, but we do know that there are a few things that I think businesses should focus on, regardless of that clear data of what's happening here. So just to recap, focusing on those lead nurture campaigns and assuming that there will be significantly longer sales cycles, experimenting into new acquisition channels and revisiting those ones that you've previously tested. So certainly question and challenge your past assumptions. Third, focus on ensuring that your early tenure clients can realize the value of the relationship and service you provide quickly. This will help make sure that they don't feel like you are a disposable expense. And lastly, look to reward loyalty by further demonstrating value. So again, as I said, not the time to assume that clients who have been with you for a long time will remain with you forever. So there's a lot of learning. I think we're really focused day to day on challenging our team to be innovative, forward thinking, and the advice that we give to our clients is to think about your goals in the long term when you think about your financial picture. And that's really what we're doing in-house, as well as just planning for the business that we want when we all start to come out on the other side of this. So Amin, with that, I will turn it back to you, and thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much, Randy. Really appreciate your insight, and I love that you went, through kind of the three core that you guys are working on. And lead nurturing, and you are completely right. The sales cycle is definitely a lot longer now. However, that doesn't mean that we should stop talking to our prospects and to our leads and continue the conversation. Have you guys experienced any differences in terms of budget shifts between, let's say, Facebook, Google, organic content? Because of what's going on, have you been shifting dollars around, or how has that experience been?
It's a good question. I would say we've been pretty focused on investing in channels that allow for more content-based marketing. So where we can actually share points of view on things like investment management philosophy or other services that we provide, because this is a product that really warrants much more of an explanation. It's not one where we can throw up an image and say, click this, you want to buy this. So it's the channels that allow for a bit more interaction that are much more appealing to us at a time like this.
And I know because of your background, you have literally worked, both in, again, AMX, Talkspace, which is an online therapy, Blue Apron for food delivery or food prep service. What do you think the other industries where you have a lot of experience in are experiencing? I know, for instance, therapy is big right now. Like I see a lot of ads, even from Talkspace. I know you were the head of marketing there. Mm-hmm. So how do you think the other industries are experiencing COVID, and how are they, again, shifting budgets because of what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a great question. I think with something like therapy, what you're seeing right now is a great approach by Talkspace, where they're certainly focused on making people know that there are options available to them, but they're doing so with a really muted and empathetic tone, right? So they're focused on letting users know that this is a service that can help them, and it's not really the buy now, click here, save this types of strategies that we see in a more traditional environment. So there's a level of sensitivity that's required of the time. And again, certain channels will be more conducive to that. So that actually is a really nice moment for like connected TV, for podcast sponsorships, where it's not that instant ad that's driving an instant transaction. And I think that's where you're starting to see them start to come up, as well as several others in the telehealth space. And every business kind of has some inherent opportunity, like Blue Apron. There's a huge demand for meal delivery now, particularly as we're starting to see small traces of like supply chain disruption in grocery. and many users thinking about homebound solutions. So yeah, so there's some interesting moments across the board, but I think again, those channels that allow for brands to really speak about their products and foster somewhat of a connection with their prospects are the ones that remain the most attractive.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Randy, for your time. Really appreciate all of your insight, and thanks for joining us.
Of course, thank you.